All right, many of you met Justin this morning. If you haven't met him, Justin Johnson right here. He has been my coach since July of last year. And I met Justin online through Facebook. There was a Facebook group called Bacon, Bibles, and Barbells.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what the Facebook
And a
group
podcast of the same name.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Yeah.
And it had a podcast attached to it. So, how many of you have heard of the keto diet? Keto, okay. Before I got married, I was on keto for 6-7 months, lost a ton of weight, got married, and then this interesting thing happens with men once they get married. They stop trying, and because in our premarital counseling, Mark said you bag the hunt, right? You've got the kill, it's on the wall, and then you stop pursuing your wife. And so, and that's so true. After you get married, that pressure is no longer there, and a similar thing, if not the exact same thing, happened with me. So, over the course of the next 5-6 years, gained weight. By the time Felicity came, I was 320 pounds. I was very big, and then we'll talk more about this, but something definitely fundamentally, at least a warning, I think, went off in my mind. And so I said I need to get back on keto. And keto, like many of the fad diets, operates by elimination, which we'll definitely zoom in on today. Aggressive elimination, where it's, you can only eat these things. And so I thought that was, that's what did it, was this aggressive elimination of all of these bad things. Again, we'll get more into that. So I lose weight off keto, and I get to the point where I poor Hannah, like bacon, cheese, avocado, and don't ever have rice or pasta or bread or anything sweet that gives life to your soul in the home, right? Because you can't eat it on keto. And so I think Hannah was very relieved when I finally contacted a coach. I saw Justin's name, and so got a hold of him. And your first question to me was, what are your goals?
Yeah. What do you want?
What are your goals? And you mentioned that I seemed kind of like deer in the headlights, like, I don't know how this works. And that's 100% what it was. And I never had a coach, never had no training history, didn't do sports in high school. Shocker, I know. But it was totally new. And so my goals were, okay, I want to, any man, you want to get muscular, you want to get stronger. Yes, that was there. But there was also wrapped up into Felicity had just been born. And so now I'm thinking outside of the next 10 minutes of my life and into what will the next 10 years look like? Or 15 or 20. Will I be able to throw Felicity up into the air and catch her, or chase her around? Or will I be able to chase her kids around, Lord willing? And so that calculus really, I think, started to drive me somewhere. So and I think those initial motivations are good, but they then morphed into, and Justin's gonna kick in here with significant misconceptions, because I always thought of exercise and weightlifting and sports and those things as fundamentally unpleasant and punishing. If I go over there to that barbell and pick it up, it's like, it doesn't feel nice, it's unpleasant, right? That is the misconception that I just want to go on a personal crusade against. Because the first time I picked up a barbell and set it down, I was like, what have I been missing out on? What?
Well, don't you think a piece of that was when you did so, it was a different frame of mind? Right?
Because of the motivation.
You had a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because some people like me just enjoy doing it no matter what. I get that's not everybody. But when you do so, when it's a piece of your goals and who you are and what you want to become, all of a sudden it changes.
Okay.
Right? Like, not every good habit we have every day that we do, whatever that might be. Like, when you read your Bible in the morning, do you feel like it every time?
No.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We had an honest person here. So, but we don't every time. Some of these things we do, it's like, but I have to do this now. And that's what it can be. But you understand the benefit. You have the longer term vision for where you're going and what you want, and realize that this is a step along the path to becoming what you want to be.
Yeah, duty is a part of it too.
Sure.
I do think the whole process began with duty. I have a duty to my wife. And so again, poor Hannah. It's felicity and ministry. I thought, how is my current condition going to hamper my efforts at Bowman? How is my current condition going to hamper my efforts at Bowman in the long term? When you run that kind of calculus, it can be kind of, let's just say, humbling, scathing, But first and foremost is like, how can I be a great spouse to my wife? How can I endure for my wife? And so these are we're going to build into kind of how the temptation is to just cast the body aside. It's getting resurrected anyway. Why polish brass on a sinking ship? And
that's a disbeat move, bro.
It is a disbeat move, and that is not what we want. So initial motivations were kind of a mustard seed and basic, and then I was surprised at how enjoyable it was. I was surprised at how it affected the other areas of life. And you talk about this a lot, in how the mental health of a person is affected by what they're doing physically. And so low physical activity actually has a dampening effect on just the general mental health and happiness.
Changes the way you interact with your family, your capabilities as a man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I totally 100% agree with that. There's a preacher I really like who bikes a lot, and he lifted weights back in the day, James White. James White says, everything I do is better when I'm exercising.
Yeah.
And so, again, for someone like me, I had no frame of reference for that, because exercise and I were not on speaking terms for the majority of my life. And so
I think a piece of what you're talking about, too, is not only does it become more doable and enjoyable when it's part of a bigger vision, but also when there's a structure around it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you go into anywhere you go and there's not a plan and it's chaos and you don't understand what's going on, you walk into a gym and there's 1,000 things you can do. Well, where do you start and what do you do? And that's intimidating and
the treadmill for 15 minutes.
Yeah, and that's annoying, right? It's annoying to be like, well, and why am I doing? Because I think it's good for me, but I don't know where it fits in. That's part of the obstacle.
Yeah.
Is, well, what do I do that is actually beneficial? Because you have all these options.
Right.
It's like a buffet, and it's okay, cool, but except this is a buffet where you might not want to actually eat any of the food.
A punishing buffet.
Yeah, so it's when you show up and you don't know, what am I doing, and there's not a plan, and you're going to just walk in and I'm going to do stuff that seems beneficial.
Yeah.
That's a lot harder to approach
than
I'm going to walk in, this is what I'm going to do, this is the program to address the things I need addressed in my life.
Okay, so plans. All right. Now, so this is a great segue. Now, talking about misconceptions with this whole topic: fitness, health, working out, gym, just group that all together. One misconception I had was I needed that there were, I don't know if any of you have ever Googled workout plan or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you are going to get
everything.
Millions of, and so you kind of have paralysis by options. You don't know what direction to go. And so the first misconception there is that fitness is complicated. I mean, it's deep and robust, but it really isn't complicated. Would you give us that formula, is it diet, sleep, training, or whichever formulation you want to use? Can you give us a succinct, here's fitness for the human being for life? What would you say?
Well, a lot of it is due to specific. These have always been true, but they're specifically very poignant today because the environment we live in counteracts sort of three main pillars that are fundamental to human health and well-being. And that's going to be some combo of diet, sleep, and training. Did you need to train to be healthy 1,000 years ago? Not so much. Why? Because everyone participated in physical labor. But if you sit behind a desk or you have repetitive motion type of jobs where you are physical but you're doing the same thing all the time, it tends to develop issues. If you were an agrarian farmer 1,000 years ago or in the Middle Ages or something, you were someone that was outdoors a lot. You had certain activities that were seasonal at different times. You were physically active.
Yeah.
And our environment in America is not conducive to that activity. And then we have devices and all sorts of entertainment options delivered to our bedroom at our convenience, if we want, that will keep us up all night.
Yeah.
And then there's the proliferation of stimulants. Caffeine's great, right? And then people have too much and they can't fall asleep. And then, of course, diet. If you eat the food that's the most readily accessible, the most, lowest cost per calorie, could we say, you're going to wind up in an unhealthy state.
That's key to understand, is that the easiest, so you're saying, if you are just an alien who gets dropped into the United States of America and you just have to, all right, eat like a human, but do it for the lowest cost.
Yeah.
What you're going to get is...
You're going to be at a bad time.
You're going to have a bad time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and if you follow the path of least resistance in these areas in America, you are not going to live as long, and the quality of your life is going to be much lower. You're going to be a less capable person.
So that means we're fundamentally having to push against something. Like the tide is pushing us towards unhealth.
Yeah, towards a decrepit state of being.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
I'd say I don't think my mind was wrapped around that. I don't think I grasped that in the beginning.
Yeah.
But now seeing how it can be a challenge with any important thing, knowing what you're up against, knowing the environment of a problem is super important in order to actually have success in it.
Yeah.
And so, seeing kind of what we're up against is the issue. So misconception, fitness is complicated. The answer is it's proper diet, good sleep, and even decent training.
Yeah.
Now,
the most important thing in training is consistency.
Okay. So whatever you do it regularly.
Yeah. It's like anything else. If you tried to memorize your Bible, can you bang it all out in a day and memorize a handful of verses? No, not really. Not except for kids. Kids can, adults can't. But if you want to commit a scripture to memorization, what does it require? Very regular daily effort, often in small bites. Training's the same way.
Yeah.
It's you can't train for 8 hours. It's not. You can't do it anyway. Yeah, it's not possible. Yeah. But let's say that you could, and then you don't train for several weeks. You're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
It's not the way that biology works. And it's not the way our minds work when it comes to learning. We all know that if you're studying for a test, you're better off little bite sizes daily.
Distributed,
Yeah, but if you try to cram at the end, what's going to happen? Nothing good.
Yeah, that's helpful. Paul likens, remember that verse, guys, where he says physical training is of some value.
Yeah.
But he compares it to what is very clearly the more important emphasis for him, but that's growth, spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And that's not to put down physical training. In fact, I think that's interesting to me that Paul is doing precisely what we are doing here. And that is drawing a connection between spiritual disciplines and physical disciplines. That you can't cram overnight for either, really, and have lasting benefits.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to speak to Paul's environment is, how many miles did he walk?
Yeah.
A lot. I don't know. A lot. And he was outdoors a lot. And as a tent maker, I think most of his labor was outdoors.
Yeah.
So he already had some of the things down. He didn't have access to processed foods. He walked way more miles than I think anyone in this room walks. Probably. I'm just being presumptuous here, but I'm pretty sure.
Bonnie may run some.
He had a somewhat physical, even job.
Right.
He was outdoors a lot, good sunlight exposure, a lot of things that we look for in a healthy person. And even someone in ideal conditions says bodily exercise profits a little bit. And it's not any, I think there's been a tendency, especially in the American church, to sort of almost treat that verse like he's discouraging it. It's not really worth your time. He's saying it's a little bit profitable in light of the spiritual.
Right.
But if you're in a position where the physical is holding back your spiritual capabilities, how capable are you of serving in church if you're experiencing cognitive decline because of your health state?
Yeah.
Or just because of your physical decline, you aren't available to serve at certain times.
Yeah.
Or family, or those kinds of things.
That's it. Yep.
And one thing I bring out to a lot of, I ask people sometimes is, what kind of grandparent do you want to be?
That's good.
Do you want to be a grandparent that is limited to sitting on the couch and interacting with your children, your grandchildren, and that kind of thing? Or do you want to turn into the grandparent who is capable of playing with the kids, of sitting on the floor and standing back up independently, and making those kinds of memories with your grandchild?
Can I punch in right here too?
Yeah.
Because what blows my mind is how there are videos of people who are older people who have made their own transformations.
Correct.
Because that is like a deathly misconception of like, oh, you're over 50, there's no point trying.
Yeah.
Or you're over 40, there's no point trying. I mean, that's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Absolute crazy talk. There are people who are in their 60s or 70s who do barbell training even, who do, I mean, it can be so, we're kind of getting in the weeds here, but you look at a barbell and it looks like this intimidating thing, but there are ways to...
I've seen a 93-year-old woman deadlift 200 pounds.
That's
and
crazy.
she never trained when she was younger.
93
She started
years
in her
old.
late 80s, yeah. And I have a friend, Shelby, who's now a world champion powerlifter, never touched weights until in her late 60s. She's in her mid-70s now. She's a world champion powerlifter.
That's nuts.
And
That's
she's
nuts.
stronger than a lot of my younger female clients.
So she had no training past
No.
till her 60s.
No athletic history whatsoever, actually.
Nothing. She started lifting in the 60s, and now she's a world...
She has world records.
She has world
in her
records
age
powerlifter.
category, right? I mean, this is contextualized. She's not beating me.
Yeah.
But in her age category, she's one of the top people in the world to beat right now.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy to think about.
And she's not like a genetic specimen.
Yeah.
She works hard. She has a great coach, which is not me. I'm not.
Also hit him up, but yeah.
She has a great coach. She has a great nutritionist, and she does everything they say and gets great results as a result of all of that.
Yeah.
She's dedicated. But the human body is more capable of change than we often think.
Yeah.
Not in the short term, though. So everybody that I've worked with, and even for myself, when I started this, you're usually disappointed at your short-term results. That's natural because you think, oh, in 6 months I'll be here. And it turns out in 6 months you often are not. But then when you are 5 years into consistent training, or even a year in or 2 years in, you look back and you go, when I started, I never thought I'd even get this far in a lifetime.
Right.
That's often what happens with people. I'm sure that's... Did
Yeah.
you think you'd have deadlifted over 400 pounds yesterday when we talked a year ago?
Yeah,
Did you think that was going to happen in your lifetime?
When we talked, I was overly optimistic, so that doesn't count.
It was a pipe dream.
Yeah, a pipe dream. There you go. Yeah. I really wanted to, but I didn't know what I was capable of, and I wanted to try, and I'm so glad I did. And that's something that I think everyone should hear, is that exercise that we think is so punishing or uncomfortable or not worth it actually is. And so Justin, for those who are his clients, he has a weekly Q&A. And often in those discussions, I end up repeating, not intentionally, it's just based off what we're talking about. It keeps coming up in my mind of like, working out is pleasurable. And for those of you who have exercise history, you're like, yeah, duh, I know. But for those of us who didn't, I mean, that's a straight up...
It feels scary and intimidating.
Right, scary and intimidating, or insecure or whatever it is.
You think everybody's looking at you.
Yeah,
But now you know that nobody cares.
And but more like it's not, again, I'm getting at the pleasure. That felt good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so let's move to the spiritual silliness, because God made the body that way.
Yeah.
God made the body to move and lift and push and jump and press and be mobile,
Yeah.
And some of the spiritual silliness, by the way, guys, I know we're going full bore, but at any point, if you're like, hold on, stop talking, I want to say something, or I have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we will stop.
And we'll have a Q&A at the end too.
Yeah, we're going to save...
As long as anybody needs.
We're save some time at the end.
Yeah.
Some of the silly spirituality, what did I say? Silly spirituality, yeah. That I definitely exhibited was, first, that food was inherently evil or had a moral quality. Like carbs, bad. Carbs bad. Carbs make you diabetic or whatever. I looked at food, something God created good, right? It's not what goes into man that defiles him, but what?
Comes out.
What proceeds from his mouth, proceeds from his heart. From the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so this created good I looked at and called evil. And to me, that's a problem. That indicated incorrect thinking.
Yeah.
And the second one was what we call Gnosticism.
God was indignant, basically, when he told Peter, right? When
Peter said,
down,
oh yeah.
he was like, no, God, I can't eat these. And God's God says, what God has called clean, like
Don't
that's
call
like
unclean.
don't call unclean. I said it's clean, and you don't get to contradict me.
Yeah. Eat it. Yeah. And so for Peter.
Who are you, oh man?
Yeah. To answer back to God, I don't want the carbs. So you see the issue there. God has made these good things, and I had this thought, guys. For those of you who have messed around with keto, or if anyone who's going to watch this at a later time, it was really affected by keto. I had this like fundamental error in my mind, and that was I experienced this success on keto. Keto says no bread, but Jesus Christ himself uses bread as an image of his broken body.
And you have to eat it to take communion.
I have to at least have my communion.
I'll
take the gluten-free
just
one.
A little bit.
But I just bring that up
And
not to
wine,
be super
the sugar.
spiritual, but like God must call bread at least not fundamentally evil.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of an error I had in my mind that I couldn't resolve. And so the first line of spiritual silliness would be like food is inherently evil. And it's not. It's man and it's humanity that interacts with food incorrectly.
It's like calling money evil.
Right, but
Right.
But it's not. Money isn't the root.
It's your perspective of money.
Right. Yeah. Your love of money.
Yeah, your love of money and your love of food can be evil.
Yeah.
But eating it isn't evil. But sometimes what you eat could be evil, and your motivation for eating it could be evil.
Yeah.
But it has almost nothing to do with what the food is.
Right.
In a certain sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless it's like another human being. I can't see anything else that being evil.
Yeah. Okay. Cannibalism is the exception. I'm sorry.
So do you want to talk about the second one in terms of like this term Gnosticism? It's a historic word.
Yeah.
You want to just give us a simple breakdown of kind of the polishing brass on a sinking ship kind of thing?
Yeah. Does who here knows what Gnosticism is? How many nerds do we have? One nerd.
Yeah,
Mark's not
Bonnie!
right. I mean, I know Mark has to know, but because he knows more than me. But so Gnosticism, it's derived from a Greek philosophy, essentially. There's a whole bunch of things behind it, but what's important here is it was basically a belief that the spiritual is redeemable and good and right and can be redeemed. It can be evil too, but in general, that's where holiness can be found, righteousness can be found. The flesh, anything that is matter, anything physical, whatever kind it is, it's irredeemable. It has some taint of evil in it.
Right.
And they didn't have the same sin concept necessarily, but basically it's evil on some level. Some more or less than others, but always evil.
Yeah.
And this perspective invaded the early church hard, like big time. That's why 1 John was written. 1 John was written by the Apostle John, we think when he was like 90 years old or so. He's exiled on the island of Patmos. He's been fairly uninvolved as an apostle at this point. He's sort of retired and exiled. And the Holy Spirit essentially, he's the last surviving apostle as far as we know. And the Holy Spirit essentially moves in him and says, hey, it's time to be Apostle John again. You have to do some writing because there's a dangerous teaching going around the church. And as you can imagine, once this teaching comes in the church, one of the big fundamental problems in belief that it caused was Jesus came here as flesh, right? We know this. The Gospel of John makes a big point of this. It's funny, John sort of always had it against Gnosticism. It's like he knew before when he wrote the Gospel of John, because it was written well before. Right. And
first chapter.
Yeah, first chapter starts to be
that's
which we have seen with our hands and hand, and we've touched.
Yeah.
He's already all into Christ was real.
Yeah, in body.
In body.
Yeah.
But if you ascribe to Gnosticism, if God inherited a human body, he must be tainted by evil.
Right.
Because it only follows if you've adopted this philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible heresy. Because basically, it would mean that Christ can't stand as our representative because he couldn't really be a man. He had to. The message this morning works really well with the speaking of ethereal smoke. Right? They basically believe that's what Jesus was. He was this, either he had no matter or was just pure spirit, but he essentially had no physical manifestation of himself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He could be seen but not touched,
right.
And it's obviously an absolute heresy. And where this plays out today. That was all theoretical, right?
It's important to understand that.
Yeah, it was important to understand because this did affect the early church strongly, and I think it affects us just as strongly today, just in a more indirect sense.
It's sneaky.
Where I see us erring often is the assumption that certain foods are evil, or even just that we should disregard the physical and we should read books, we should read our Bibles, of course, we should pray, you should study theology, which, yes, you should definitely do that.
Right.
Don't take this as a message to not do that. Do that. But your capability to do so and to understand these things will be very blunted if you're physically incapable. You experience cognitive decline. You experience many things. And then, as we also know from James, the practice of what is spiritual also matters, right? So your works, kind of back to where we started earlier, how beneficial is this spiritual knowledge if you're someone who has been rendered incapable of service to your family, community, and church because of physical issues? Now, aging happens.
Right.
You can't stop the clock, but you can make yourself more capable, even a lot later in life than people think.
And delay it, or maybe even reverse it almost functionally.
Yeah, I'm in my 30s, and my 30s have been healthier than my 20s. I'm more capable now than I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
As a husband, as a father,
Yeah.
as a church man in my service there, to my community, my extended family. I'm more capable now than I was physically because I'm healthier today.
And there are guys who are, and gals who are, we've already talked about, Shelley, what was her name? Shannon?
Shelley, yeah, the powerlifter, yeah.
So, I mean, even twice your age, beginning and having similar transformations.
Yeah.
So, the two...
Shelley and I started around the same time training.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we had the same coach for a while.
All come up together. Cool.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
So the two prongs are that food somehow has this like evil quality to it, and that isn't true. But secondarily, that this body is it's bad. I mean, Jesus took on flesh. The Son of God took on flesh. Son of Man. When God created Adam and Eve and placed it in the garden, He called all of it good. And so it is good that we have these bodies. The way these bodies were designed to function was designed and called good. And so, and I think we would all say amen to that. We would say, yep, I agree with that. But I think, I know, our actions aren't always in accord with that. Or perhaps we despair of our physical condition, and then we just say, well, it's all getting redeemed or resurrected in the end, or we kind of, flip the proverbial table and just say it's not worth it. And that is just definitely not the case.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the silly spirituality that I definitely experienced and was worked out of, partly with your help. And so now, very briefly, we're going to do the three pillars here. So we're talking about diet, sleep, and training.
Yeah.
And Bowman tonight, I want us to walk away with something like a nugget in our head that is easy to remember. And obviously, diet and sleep and training is it. But can you walk us through each one in sequence and like what the main things we need in order to be successful there?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll start with diet, which is the third rail in some, so those of you, some of you guys might be following very specific diets, keto, whatever. The point of this is not to just put all those down, but I just ask that you listen with an open mind if that's where you find yourself. So diet, fundamentally, what are we looking to do with it? Like what constitutes a healthy diet? Because that's defined. If you go on the internet, that's defined like 100 different ways by 100 different people. There's just a lot of information out there. It's very overwhelming, right? There's a few fundamentals that I look for.
Okay.
One, the less processed in general, the better. If you can prepare it in a microwave. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible that you can get a microphone over there? I'm hearing half your words, and that's all I'm hearing.
Yes, I can make that happen.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, keep going, Justin.
All right.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay. Let's let it.
Go ahead. You keep talking, and then Jim, I'll get the mic going while I talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So less processed is better. So if it's a freezer meal or something like that, generally recommend don't do it. You're going to want to eat a high protein diet. Everybody should. As Americans, we don't eat enough protein. And unfortunately, it's the most expensive of the macros. Carbs and fats are cheap. The protein is not, especially good quality like meat. What's the most expensive thing you buy? It's probably meat. I guess produce too. You should eat lots of that too, but I haven't gotten there. So a lot of people think in terms of protein like, oh, I should eat that because it's satiating, right? And it helps you stay compliant with not overeating or something like that. That's true, but that's not all it comes down to. What the number one predictor of your survival capability at the time of a cancer diagnosis is how much muscle mass you're carrying at that moment. That's the number one predictor above anything else. Should I get closer so it's...
Yeah.
The number one predictor is going to be how much muscle mass you're carrying.
So if we get cancer,
Yeah.
God's in heaven, right? He ordains all things. But as far as statistics go,
Yes.
We stand the greatest chance depending on how much muscle mass we have.
Correct. Yeah. And the goal of this talk, by the way, is not to get everybody to look like me. Just as an aside, people they want to do an intake meeting with me, and I have all the time, men and women. Oh, I don't want to look like you. I don't want to get bulky like you. Okay, that's fine. I promise it won't happen on accident. I promise. I can't guarantee many things when I work with anybody or when I give advice. I can guarantee that.
Jim, is that good?
That's better.
Okay. And so part of having a high protein diet is obviously that it's satisfying and it's easy to be full when you eat protein, but this is to preserve your muscle mass. As we age, we know that muscle mass goes down. Training mitigates this, but a big component of that is also just going to be how much protein you're eating. When you get sick, you lose muscle mass. If you run a fever, you lose muscle mass. All of these events in life, over decades and decades, are chipping away at what is sort of your greatest health buffer, at what is keeping you going. We know that how well an older person can execute a sit to stand unassisted is one of the greatest predictors of how much longer you have to live. So if you can sit on a chair, get up unassisted, you're in okay shape. How fast you can do so, that is also a bearing in the whole equation. But once you need assistance to get up, that's a point at which you should be examining your health state, because a lot of people think that you can't get it back. You can get it back. And what's going to be one of the best ways to protect this, aside from training, is a high protein diet.
Okay.
Protein is what you're made of.
Yeah.
It's everything but your bones. Basically, it needs protein. Your skin, obviously your muscle tissue, everything else. You're made of proteins. And I don't know, I don't want to get super technical, but everyone who took chemistry probably heard the term protein decay rate. Proteins fall apart. They just break down. That's why meat goes bad so fast. It's protein decay. The molecules fall apart. So you're always falling apart. The most important parts of you are always falling apart. And how could you replace them? By inserting more protein. And the insidious thing about protein just gets deeper. Your body can't make it. Your body can turn fats into sugars, and your body can turn sugars into fats. Back and forth, just fine. You can't turn anything into protein. You can only eat it. The human body is not capable of making protein out of anything. So it's really important.
Okay, so high protein diet is massive, and that's something that if I could use that as a misconception, I thought, protein is how you get muscles, but you've just demonstrated a high protein diet is not just for meatheads. It's for everybody.
Yeah,
everybody needs to eat a high protein diet.
Yeah.
Okay, and then in the interest of time, sleep critical. Would you sleep influences?
Can I just go
everything?
real quick? I'll just finish the diet real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully I sold you on proteins. What do you do with all the other stuff? I almost don't care. But what I will say is, as an easy guidance, 2 servings of vegetables every day, 2 servings of fruit. Limit your fats, as many carbs as it takes to make you feel okay. And if you need to lose weight, reduce carbs. If you need to maintain weight, bring them up a little. That's it. Yeah. If you eat whole food sources that are not processed, it's a lot easier, because it's really hard to overeat things like rice and meat and a big bowl of salad. It's really hard to pig out on that. Way harder than lasagna. Yeah. I promise. I can confirm.
Lasagna.
I hope
it's the one food I'm immune to.
That's the diet primer.
Yeah.
Sorry, where are we going next?
No, okay, great. So just to reiterate.
Let it go.
High protein, low fats.
I like to keep fats low, and here's why. Fats are useful, they're helpful. You don't need many of them, and most of us are carrying more than what we need anyway. So if you need them, your body will take care of that. But beyond that...
He's calling us fat.
Yeah, I don't worry about it. So the other fundamental to this is insulin resistance is obviously very prevalent in the United States. Metabolic disease is a big problem. Consumption of fats is one of the primary drivers. It's not carbs, actually. It is fats with carbs, because this delays absorption rate and makes it so that the time under which your body is having to absorb sugars is longer. That time under load, shall we say, on the system is what causes the problems.
So controlling fats. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now sleep. Give us the quick on sleep, and then we'll end here before Q&A talking about training. So sleep.
Yeah.
How do we get it wrong most of the time?
With most people, it's just staying up late watching things. Honestly.
Yeah.
Just stop watching stuff at night as much.
Yeah.
And I'll even say, like, you can even get away with a lot of that if other things are in order, but that's fundamental to many people. And also, like, so if you watch stuff and you want to get away with it, don't watch something that's stimulating or exciting. Go watch a documentary, I don't know, or watch something theologically edifying even.
Sermons.
Which might help you fall asleep, If it's a recording of something I said, then maybe.
Sermon on Judges 11.
Or Matthew 1,
The genealogy. So-and-so was so-and-so's dad. Yeah, okay.
That's fundamental, but the other thing is going to be consistent timing. If you go to bed at the same time, your body follows a rhythm and a cadence. It knows. You guys, probably most people in here have had dogs, right? When do dogs sleep? Whenever they want to, wherever they want to. Their biology is completely different from our own. They don't have a circadian rhythm. They're capable of getting whatever they want out of whatever sleep at any time. We don't work that way. God created us to be day and night. Yeah. We're made to have a day and night. Yeah. And when you start messing with the timing of that, you cause problems. People that do shift work, there's probably a few of you in here, and you know how miserable that can make you feel. There's a reason. Shift work on average removes 7 years of your lifespan because of the circadian rhythm disruption.
By working nights like that, yeah.
Usually they're rotating around.
Yeah.
So usually people that do shift work are doing nights, and they might have some days.
So
their body never knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
And this will knock several years off your life.
Huh.
Yeah.
So sleep is critical.
So yeah, timing of sleep. The other thing that's important is getting some signaling from outside. A fundamental to this, and this is what I do, you wake up, go outside just for a minute or two. Even if it's dark, you're still getting radiation from the sky, solar radiation. Your eyes need to see this to know it's morning. This kicks off basically what amounts to a bunch of software processes in the brain. And your brain knows, I'm awake, it's time to do daytime stuff. And then in the evening, it's time to do nighttime stuff, like recover, and those types of things. If you don't have that signaling, a lot of those processes don't kick off, and you may have lower quality sleep, you may have trouble falling asleep, you may wake up, way before your alarm goes off, or your alarm might go off even though you've got 8 hours, and you feel like, that didn't do anything. I feel worse than I went to bed. Yeah. This type of thing can help with that. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but those are the main key players that I look for.
Okay. So diet, sleep, and now training. Number one thing, I just realized how great the barbell is. And if you don't know we'll describe the barbell. Well, why is it such a great thing?
The barbell is a nice way to train because it is infinitely, you can make it as heavy as you want and as light as you want. And it's simple. It's cheap.
Yeah,
It's like you don't have to buy equipment.
That's huge.
It's easy to get a hold of one. There's so many variations you can do as far as like how you're training and everything. It's an easy way to involve the most muscle mass with the least amount of time to train the body to adapt, which is ultimately what we're doing. We're trying to get the body to adapt to bearing more load so that you can bear more load in the gym or during training time.
Yeah. And
then when life hits you, you're also a more resilient person.
And training equals working out. Training equals exercise. That's a synonym. I think the big message you would want to share, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that training or working out at home is probably way more doable than we would think.
Yeah.
And isn't going to cost as much as we think. And then figuring out what to do is easier to find out than we think. Would you agree with all of that?
I think so, although the internet's clouded the last part a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad stuff out there too. For like people that are like, I don't want to hire a coach or whatever.
Yeah.
Go do starting strength for a while with a barbell.
Yeah.
Just Google starting strength.
It'll be simple.
You'll have something that'll get you some mileage for a while. Yeah.
A lot of people agree. So starting strength is one of those programs, and it's straightforward. You do these movements, and you just increase weight. And would you say that's something anybody can get in on?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make adjustments for some people based on injury history or if they're elderly. There's sometimes older people can't squat because their shoulders don't have the mobility.
Yeah.
So you do other things instead, but in general, yes.
But even then, you could progress up to a squat with an older person. You could get them to a squat. You would just start with perhaps a chair and shoulder exercise.
It sometimes. Honestly, I've actually had some people that I can't get their shoulders to do it past a certain age. And you know what?
But the squat's the crazy
it's
one.
It's not important enough, so we'll just do another squat variant.
Yeah.
There's always some other way to use a barbell.
Okay, so that's key. There's always some other way. Or if it's not a barbell, it's you have weights in all sorts of sizes. So I don't think it's getting a hold of the resource that's probably the struggle for most people. And as it was for me, but it's having okay, here's what you do.
Yeah,
so
structure.
All right, we are at 5 till. Definitely went over a lot. Any questions you guys have for Justin on what we've said so far? Diet, sleep, training, Gnosticism. Bonnie.
So, comment and a question. So, there's almost too much information on the internet now as far as figuring out what to get to use to work out. It's certain way overwhelming.
Yeah.
But then, so my question is, what's your opinion on intermittent fasting?
I think that the way it's usually practiced is counterproductive, and here's why. So fasting puts you in a generally catabolic state, which means that your body is now going to be consuming itself, especially the proteins in your body. So, and a lot of the reasons that people claim that it's so helpful is because of autophagy, which is the concept of replacing old cells as they're dying out. That happens when you sleep sufficiently. So you don't really need to do more as long as the quality of your sleep is good. Now, if you have terrible quality sleep or inadequate sleep, then it's not happening adequately, of course. Now, what's nice about intermittent fasting is it provides you the ability, sort of an easy compliance mechanism, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because you go all day and you're like, I'm not eating anything till dinner, and that's kind of easier because it's simple, right? The halfway point, the sort of medium, is eat in the morning and in the evening. And what you're going to emphasize in both those cases is protein consumption. And if you're trying to restrict calories, then just eat as much meat as you can with the biggest salad you can.
But
that's a really simplistic way of approaching it, but I've actually done that with some clients. It's an easy way to restrict calories. And
is that fasting technically?
You're still fasted. Yeah, it's still a fast for several hours during the day. And it's only to make life more simple, which is really what it comes down to. It does That I like better. And the other thing that happens, so this allows you to get more protein in, because you can only really eat so much meat in one sitting. Let's be honest.
Well, it's just like that carnivore diet, like it's, that's just overwhelming to keep meat. Like,
It is. It gets old too, fast.
And those fad diets, and you can speak to this, is they eliminate so much. Again, getting back to that spiritual silliness. Oh, food is evil. Carbs are bad. Eliminate them. I'm losing weight. Oh, that confirms in our mind carbs are bad. You harp on this all the time. It's not that they're bad. It's just that keto, it's a compliance thing.
Yeah.
So what are the conditions that keto or carnivore create?
There's a few things. You said that people often report feeling good on keto or carnivore, right?
Right.
Has anybody ever heard someone say that they felt better when they switched?
to doing keto?
Yeah.
Carnivore? I know somebody that has done keto and they love it, and we know somebody that does carnivore and loves it.
Yeah.
I just can't get past the fact that.
And you don't have to. That's what's so great.
Yeah.
But everybody knows somebody that's reported feeling so much better after they switched. But what was their diet like before? There's a context to this. If they're eating McDonald's all the time and highly processed foods and junk and drinking soda, then I would expect almost anything they do that has a modicum of going in the right direction to make them feel better. But that doesn't mean it's the best for you necessarily. It's just like, but that's a lot better than eating junk. I would definitely give anyone that. Like I would rather see America on carnivore than America on McDonald's. I would never say that it's best, but it would be better than what most Americans are doing today.
So would you say it's like...
Does that help answer a little bit? Okay.
Because, I've done it all, but you hear...
Yeah.
You hear that it's great for intermittent, and then you hear it's not.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious as to...
Yeah, it just...
lives it. Like.
Yeah, to me, it's like people that say it helps so much. It's like, well, I bet it helped because you're eating horribly before. So of course you feel better now because you're not putting trash in your body. You're putting good quality stuff now. It's just not quite the right things.
Would you say those fad diets are like, you've got a grove of trees, one of them is dead,
Yeah.
and instead of going in and removing the dead tree, it's either I burn them all down or I chop down that one and the fiber around it. Like it's this, you're changing and removing a lot that isn't the problem.
Correct. Yeah.
In order to get at this one thing.
To me, it's a little bit of like cutting off your nose to spite your face
Right.
kind of thing. And I will say I have a couple times put people on keto or carnivore because there's so much like allergic responses and other things going on. I can't figure out. It's like we remove one thing and then another thing, and it's like, okay, too many variables. It's an elimination diet.
Yeah.
I take all the variables away, and then I reintroduce other normal whole foods one at a time, and then we finally figure out, oh, you responded poorly to someone, we know that's a culprit.
Yeah.
And it's useful for that, for sure, and I've done that a number of times.
Any other questions? Yes, Cindy.
For a high protein diet, how much protein a day do you recommend?
Great question. I should have answered that earlier. Generally, we're looking at a gram per pound of your lean body mass. So a gram per pound of your ideal body weight. So if it's Jamie 3 years ago, guess what? It's the same as today, which is
265.
Yeah, but I don't have you eat that much.
Right, you have me at so my lean body weight. So that'd be what, 230 or 225?
Just in the low 200s usually.
Yeah.
And that's what you should have eaten. What I would have talked when you were. What was your biggest
320.
320.
Yeah.
Guess what? I would put you on about the same low 200s.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to feed your fats full of protein. I need to protect your muscle mass.
Your ideal body weight.
Yeah. So think of what your ideal body weight probably is, and when I say that, probably all of you a number popped in your head. I'd really like to be, whatever the number is. That's how many grams. Yeah.
That's so helpful too.
And it's not.
I like that.
It might feel like a lot to eat. I eat 250 grams of protein a day. It takes a deliberate effort on my part. But when I spread that out over like 5 meals, it's not that big of a deal. 1 or 2 of those might be a protein shake. Well, that's easy. And the rest I just make sure, in the morning I've got eggs and sausage. And then, the lunch, how much chicken do I need? Okay, that's the chicken I'm eating. And then dinner, whatever my wife's making, we've, kind of figured out what we need. and it's really meat heavy. Whatever the meat is, I know that I need 50 to 60 grams of protein per meal, and she knows that she needs 20 to 30.
Cool. So we're going to do one thing here. We're technically at time. We're going to keep sitting here. But for those who came expecting to be out at 6, we want to honor your time. So I'm going to pray real quick, and then we're just going to keep talking. So, Lord, thank you for this time. Thank you for bringing Justin to us today. We do, as we prayed earlier, we want to, you've given us these bodies. We want to render these bodies back to you. We want to live lives with these bodies in ways that honor you, reflect your goodness, and build the kingdom. So help us to do this, Lord. Help us to be faithful. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So obviously, free to leave. We're at 6. But to me, this is the juicy time here, the Q&A. So the 1 gram of
My general recommendation
protein per
for
pound.
fats is going to be half of that.
Yeah.
Half of whatever that number is.
Yeah.
Usually the way that looks is eat all the fatty meat, the red meat that you want, save that for dinner,
Okay.
and then spread out the rest through the day.
Yeah.
You know, you usually go for leaner or leanish sources of protein.
Other questions? Yeah.
How does your diet affect autoimmune diseases? Or does it?
It can aggravate them really badly. That's why. So like some people have had to put on keto or carnivore for a little bit as an elimination diet. It's because we can't figure out what's triggering it, and so we have to slowly put things back in, one at a time, very carefully, and find out what causes the aggravation.
Yeah.
Does that answer? It's not now. I don't have a diet. There's not a Coach Justin diet. If I did, maybe I'd be making more money. But to me, it's just the human diet. What does the human body need? And I'm just following what I think is most healthy for people. And unfortunately, I don't have a snappy name.
I've got psoriasis, and it seems to be just a word. Nobody
Yeah.
knows what causes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they call it autoimmune, so
Yeah.
I was wondering
How
if it
diet
was
would
my
affect that.
garbage yet.
It can be diet. You know, it can be diet. It can be something in your environment. You know, it can be all sorts of things. It can cause various autoimmune conditions. I mean, obviously, diet could be a big one.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
When Hannah and I got married, within a year or two, I started getting hives, hives in my palms, hives, and I had it all the way through until I started exercising. I would get crazy hives, like it was really destroying my quality of life, like inner thigh, in my knees, and they had no trigger. I'd be having a great day. People are like, well, it sounds like you're stressed. I'd be having a great day and then break out in these hives. But when I started exercising, vast reduction in these things. I mean, I went to a doctor, went to a specialist. They're like, we don't know, you're not allergic to anything.
Yeah.
But then I started working out, exercising, and probably 95% reduction.
Yeah.
And so training has an influence on those things, right?
Yeah, I think it's, well, I don't think it's, I wouldn't say training, I would say just your lifestyle changed drastically in the last year, especially. Okay. And so often those are indicators of something else going wrong. There can be a trigger, obviously, you can sort of eliminate that'll fix it, but often it's a warning sign that there's a greater systemic issue, and that's usually there's not one thing to change to fix that. It might be you have to be more active. It might be you have to be outside more. It might be you also have to change your diet. It might be you also have to train. Like you didn't just, as we were talking about variables earlier, you didn't change one variable, so we can't say it was one thing, but I'm not convinced it's one thing anyway. You probably couldn't convince me of that. But what I do believe is that you changed all of those things and they worked together to help you because you're just healthier now, and so you're going to be less prone to autoimmune dysfunction.
Interesting. Okay.
I hope that's helpful.
Real quick, what does God tell us about if you don't work, you don't eat?
That's what he says, and I believe it. Are we going to talk about communism now?
If you don't work out, you don't get to eat.
What are your thoughts on nuts and seeds and things like that as sources of protein?
The issue with a lot of nuts is they're high fat, and so like it really skews the ratios there. So you end up consuming a lot of calories, and on a practical level, the hulls of many of those things are hard for the gut to break down. Some people are more tolerant than others when I say this, but it's really tough to get 50 grams of protein from almonds because you also have to get like 100 grams of fat, which is 900 calories.
That'd be
I'm
crazy.
not talking as your straight source.
I'm exaggerating. I'm speaking extremes here. Sorry if the sarcasm was lost. But in general, I think in moderate amounts it's fine. I don't think that they're particularly nutritious, if you will. But I have some clients that like them, and so I don't put them on diet plans because I think that I can get other things for people that they need. But if sometimes I have someone that just likes them, and so I say, okay, well, this is a meal we'll put, mixed nuts in or whatever they want. So they can have a place. I just don't rely on them as like a cornerstone staple of nutrition. And I love pistachios, so
Hey.
I do indulge.
Cashews, man.
Oh,
Cashews.
yeah, cashews too. Yeah, no, I love.
And I know they're extremely high calorie.
They are.
Because of the fat content.
Yeah, to me, they're somewhat of a once in a while indulgence. That's the way I look at it. It's not as bad for you as dessert, but it's kind of like something I reserve for a once in a while like treat.
Clarence, where are you doing this? Oh, you're saying bye. Okay. Brian.
So how does your cholesterol react to a whole bunch of red meat?
Almost does nothing at all. Yeah, maybe about 10% swing one way or the other. It's been really well studied that dietary cholesterol has very little effect on blood cholesterol in most people. There are a few people that are outliers genetically, but usually it doesn't do much. I've actually run this experiment myself because everybody in my family has very high cholesterol on both sides. We all have, but none of us have heart disease. I don't want to go too far down the cholesterol rabbit trail, but I went one time 4 months, I consumed essentially 0 saturated fats. Basically 0. Really high fiber, really boring, really annoying. Guess what it did to my cholesterol? It actually got higher. Probably because it just does this, and I caught it on a low day, and then I caught it on a high day 4 months later. The truth is, cholesterol is a very poor predictor of cardiovascular outcomes, cholesterol values in blood. It's not very well established. And even the inventor in the 70s of the tests we use today said it could be useful for general screening, but it doesn't mean you have heart disease or even necessarily prone to it. If you go in any hospital today and you were to query all of the people that are in the hospital at that moment for cardiovascular disease, whether due to surgery or emergency, about half of them will have high cholesterol, and the other half will not. If you also were to survey the entire American population, about half of them have high cholesterol and half of them do not. So it's all the same.
You've never had high cholesterol per se.
Mhm.
My numbers are pretty good.
Yeah.
Same, have you guys had your cholesterol checked?
My time.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul. Good score on the cholesterol.
It's just not much of a predictor. So in blood work, what I'm looking for are indicators of metabolic disease, insulin resistance, and other things like that.
So you said something about insulin resistance. I didn't
Yeah.
quite understand what you were saying.
Yeah.
About the time period.
Yeah, do you want me to explain that a little more?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so insulin resistance is sort of like the key factor in metabolic disease, which is diabetes, especially type 2. But type 2 can obviously lead to type 1 because you end up overwhelming the pancreas and the body basically attacks it. So insulin resistance would be basically defined as the body has a reduced capability to respond to insulin as a signaling hormone in an appropriate manner. Now, what insulin does, very simply, is it interacts with the mostly skeletal muscle cells in your body, other organs too, but we're just going with the very big fundamental thing that it does, to basically think of it as like it's the key to the garage door. The garage door opens, insert nutrients, protein, carbs, and fats. This is also true in your fat cells too, so it also makes your fat store fat. So it's sort of like the energy intake hormone. This is why your blood sugar will run high if you're type 2 diabetic, because you can push the button on the garage door opener, and the garage door opened. This is a really crude illustration, but it'll work. Opened like 1 foot. So how effective is that door now? It's not very effective, and so blood sugar runs high, does this damage. Why is high blood sugar bad? I'm really glad you asked. Thank you.
Hey, why is high blood sugar bad?
Oh, Jamie, this is also really simple. Glucose is a crystal. It has a crystal structure. Crystals have sharp edges. When crystals rub against all your blood vessels, they score them and cause damage. What do you think causes plaque formation?
I don't think I ever knew that.
Yeah, plaque formation in the arteries is like a scab. It's where that area, if you rub the same spot on your skin, it'll turn red, it'll get irritated, and eventually it'll bleed, and then it'll form a scab. Why? Because you can't heal as fast as the damage is being done. That's what happens in the arteries when plaque forms. The two culprits to this are high blood glucose levels, so sugar in blood, high, chronically high. It can go high for a moment, but needs to come back down. And chronically high blood pressure. That's what causes the damage that causes plaque formation. So I pretty much don't care about anybody's lipids. It's actually an indicator of other health things. I don't care about it for cardiovascular health. But what I do care about for cardiovascular health is blood pressure, blood glucose. Those are the two fundamental sort of keys of knowing, are you going to form, plaque, calcium buildup, and that kind of thing in the arteries.
That's my problem.
So you have calcium buildup.
Yeah.
Do you have high blood pressure?
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that do it for most people.
Yeah.
So if you can get your blood pressure down, then, and usually that obviously weight loss helps, but, proper hydration, eating foods that are less inflammatory, less processed in general. And honestly, just exercise does lower blood pressure.
I got a question.
What?
So,
They're allowed to ask questions.
Someone asked about cardio versus weight training in terms of helping with weight loss. Because I always thought, you want to lose weight? Go sit on a bike for 2 hours or go for a run. And that does not make me stoked.
It's long-term versus short-term. When you run, walk, do cardio, you're burning extra calories. It works great, doesn't it? Now, you can always eat more than you run. I promise. You can't outrun a fork. But when you train with weights and you build muscle mass, you're increasing your basal metabolic rate, because muscle requires, I think it's each pound of muscle is around 30 calories a day. It requires just to sustain itself, not when it's being used, just to sit there and exist and not wither away. So it's like a longer term investment. You're putting money away. It'll pay back later.
That's crazy. 30 calories?
Yeah.
To just sit there and
Yeah, I mean, this is, by the way, a debatable number. And a lot of people are...
higher?
It's both.
Yeah.
And it's probably individual, but it's approximate, yeah.
So I know when I work out, like when I lift weights, I do lift my weights. I feel better for a lot longer than I do after walking around the track for a mile and a half.
Amen. Yeah. Hallelujah.
My
Praise
man.
the Lord.
Let's close it there.
Yeah.
That's just the way that you're responding as an individual to the training. Some people say that they feel better after walking than they do after lifting weights. I'm in the lifting weights category. I feel good when I walk too, but I feel really good after I train.
Would you say that both are like ideal? Have
Yes.
a mixture of both?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. And specifically what I mean is training with weights to gain muscle mass and gain some strength, and at least walking. You don't have to run. In fact, I am of the opinion at this stage that running is not really for adults, just because it beats up your joints. Yeah. I know. I get it.
Bye,
I get what you're
Simmons.
saying. There are people that can participate if they want. That's totally fine. But for most adults, you're going to end up with just too much joint pain. That's the case for a lot of people, even if you're a lightweight person. But you should do things that bring your heart rate up, for sure. And walking is good. If you want to get your heart rate higher, walking faster is really good too. As is walking with weight on your back, or walking uphill, or walking on a treadmill that's set at an incline.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of ways to do it. The other thing too, like with my training programs, Jamie, does your heart rate go down ever when you train in the gym?
Not really.
Because I don't allow him to take long rest times.
Yeah. 1 minute. 1 minute.
Usually it's 1 minute between sets.
Yeah.
So when he's in there for an hour, his heart never goes down.
Yeah.
His heart rate stays elevated the entire time, as is with mine when I train. So you are getting some training that way from it. But I also would say, in addition, there should be some dedication toward movement. And you running marathons and long distance, that's totally great for you. I'm really glad you're getting away with it. At 19, I used to run long distance. At 19, I had to stop. My knees just couldn't do it anymore. And I wasn't this heavy. I weighed 130 pounds.
So how do you get it, like, so, and I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's a conversation that is just, happens all the time.
Sure.
And I know that, anyway, so how would you expect somebody to get their anaerobic exercise, which helps with the heart rate, because that's what helps the weight loss and stuff.
Right.
So would you suggest them walk? Because if
Yeah.
he only gets a minute to rest, like his heart rate's not going down, so he's not doing that.
He does put me on a treadmill though. You'll program cardio.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, every client gets something. It'll only be just treadmill work, but they'll get something. I want everybody to at least, or walk outside, or whatever it is. But I want everybody moving, not just lifting weights. You shouldn't just lift weights. Yeah, as much as that's my emphasis. Yes, sir.
I think I'm happy you haven't talked about the one thing I eat every day, which is ice cream. But what about fish oil supplements? Do they do any good? Is that a waste, or is there value?
The right quality fish oils and the right kind of fish oils, yes, actually, yes. So the issue with many fish oils is that they're rancid and they're omega-6s, which you don't need more of. You get plenty of that from saturated fats and things like that. What Americans are typically deficient in is omega-3s.
Huh.
You can buy and I recommend you just buy the oil on Amazon or wherever else and put it in a spoon and swallow it. It's not fish. It doesn't taste fishy when you get the omega-3. It tastes nutty.
Okay.
It tastes like nuts. It tastes very good. It actually has a rich, nutty flavor.
Cool.
Yeah, it tastes like tree nuts, basically.
So you go on Amazon, omega-3 oil.
Yeah, you can do it that way. You'll find stuff.
And so whatever benefit
And don't get the cheapest one.
Whatever you would
If you
want.
smell it and it smells weird and gross, don't put it in your mouth. If you smell it and it smells like oil,
Instead of fish oil, get that.
yeah, don't bother with fish oil.
Yeah.
It's usually rancid and from commercial fishing operations.
So
Yeah.
do you change it with like flaxseed?
Flaxseed has it in there too. You just got to be careful how much you consume, because you might be on the toilet a lot more than you intend. But yeah, it's in there if you can handle it.
So is that better? Because I'm on blood thinners because I got heart issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't do fish oil because they said it'd make my blood too thin.
Okay.
So I mean,
I don't know what the implications of omega-3s specifically are on blood thinners. That's not. I could look it up, but I don't know off the top of my head. So I don't want to give you bad advice. I'm going to give you the cop-out, go talk to your doctor. Or Google it, because you'll find that really fast, which is what I do when I don't have the information. I don't read anything that's from any mainstream published sources that you would be familiar with already. Try to find something that's like in CBI or one of the actual, like find a study or something like that. If it's on some magazine site that you've ever heard of or seen on a rack, I would generally not read it.
but can you get enough omega-3s like from eggs and stuff like that?
You can in theory from like pasture raised eggs. You will never get enough from commercial eggs. There's almost none left. in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the way that it's because of the way they feed them, they don't have omega-3s hardly at all anymore.
Wow.
And also other eggs, like duck eggs and pigeon eggs, tend to have more because commercial farming hasn't really hit those sources so bad. So they're usually eating a higher quality feed. I actually keep ducks partly for this reason. And I eat duck eggs, yeah. Not for everybody, but they sure are for me. I love them.
Big old eggs.
They're really big.
They are.
I have another question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
This is for everybody. I'm here all night.
Well, so have you heard or do you know if you can reverse heart plaque stuff?
Yes, you can.
So
Despite what many doctors believe, it can be done.
So you would recommend maybe trying diet and exercise before any invasive?
If you can, although if it's a severe blockage,
Well, and I know you're not a doctor, and I
yeah.
know you
Well, even as not a doctor, if it's a severe enough blockage,
Yeah.
if you're going to die in 2 weeks, I would suggest not trying to treat it with omega-3s.
Yeah.
But you can prevent the next one. Sort of like the ship's already sailed with at a certain point. But yeah, I have actually seen calcium scores go down with lifestyle intervention. It does, those people work for it.
Right.
Work hard for it. You have to try. This isn't like if you want that, and I applaud anybody embarking on that journey. You will have to do your cardio. You'll have to train, and you'll have to be on a strict diet, and that's generally going to mean no ice cream.
Take me home, Jesus.
But it does not mean no carbs though necessarily. It just means the right carbs at the right time and not excessive. That's all that means.
Just enough to have, like you said, I really liked that, just enough to have feel good.
Energy, yeah. It's a fundamental, it's what humans need for energy. Your brain runs on carbs.
God made it.
It also is what regulates a lot of your hormone production as well. So this is part of why a lot of people, they go on low carb diets, they feel low energy, even if the calories are the same. It's because you've down regulated all of your sex hormone production. You've also down regulated your growth hormone production, so your healing processes at night are blunted. All your growth factors and recovery factors are reduced because the body biologically operates in sort of a feast or famine mode or metabolic adaptation. Why? Because the people that didn't have this mechanism died. So what I mean by this is, imagine, right, we don't worry about food scarcity and other dangers that people 2,000 years ago had to deal with. But imagine that food is scarce due to famine, right? If we have famine, we just import it and we complain about the price of groceries going up 10%. 2,000 years ago, you died, or almost died. Well, you can imagine while you're in this state, your body's going to adapt. It's going to downregulate metabolism. Downregulating those hormone productions also is useful because you probably shouldn't be participating in procreation activities while you're about to die, while you're, days away from starvation. Probably is a bad thing to do. So it's this mechanism God created for survival. Unfortunately, in our weird artificial environment, it gets exploited, and so we have to work around it carefully when we diet. Hopefully that helps. Probably more of an answer than you wanted.
No, it's,
Anybody else?
What do you think about multiple small workouts?
Totally
as
fine.
Opposed, because you made that comment about his heart rate being elevated, and to me that's the con of the smaller workouts.
If you're breaking it up, yeah.
Yeah, is that doesn't happen as much.
Yeah, it doesn't happen as much, but I mean,
So fair enough.
realistically, what's it going to change? I don't think much.
When you do reps, you don't get as tired. So is that like the muscles aren't getting as much pain?
What do you mean? Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Well, if I have an hour-long workout and I do the whole hour, I'm getting more tired. And so then that makes me question if the muscles aren't getting as much.
Okay, yeah. You deplete more, yes. Yeah, because if you're spreading them throughout the day, you probably are also eating in between, and so you're replenishing your energy stores. Versus if you do it all at once in an hour, you start out and you have this much storage in the muscles of glycogen, which is how we store energy, and then it's come down to a much lower level than a 10-minute workout you did 5 times that day or something in between meals.
Yeah.
But realistically, how much difference does this make for you as a person if you were to do it that way? Probably not much, and you're definitely better off doing it that way than not doing it at all, and that should never discourage you.
And that is kind of where I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would much rather see someone do that than nothing or let it discourage them away from anything. So
Are you using Jake's weights?
Yeah.
Let's go, Chloe.
that's awesome. Good.
Second question.
Yeah.
Do you think that tendonitis, do you have opinions about whether it should be babied or not?
Yes, I do.
It should be? Or you
No, I have opinions.
Okay.
He didn't tell me to baby it. Go out and walk.
Which time?
Yeah.
So I do say this as someone who's experienced it very severely in my strength career. I had glute tendonitis so bad, my wife could squat heavier than me for 18 months because I just couldn't do it. It was bad. So, and I've helped a lot of clients with it. The short of it is, it should be babied, but probably less than you think. Meaning that you need to move to heal it because you want the stimulation.
Yeah.
But the stimulation should stop short of re-injuring and re-aggravating. So during that time when I was injured and when someone like Jamie gets injured, the inclination and what you're going to hear from most people is stop, sit, go home, do nothing.
That's what I thought you were going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did not say that.
No.
And you thought it was weird and you were a little worried when I told you go move.
I'm like, you want me to leg press a week after, yeah. But
Yes.
very low weight.
Yeah, very, but yeah, like stupidly light weights that are like nothing to you, generally.
Yeah.
And that's how you feel it out the following week after the injury. But you should be moving. If it's a muscle tear, you should be moving. You just shouldn't be moving so much that you re-injure or make it worse. You're gonna have to take a step back. When I have a significant injury, I go from, let's say, deadlifting 600 pounds to 200 pounds or less, even. I go down to nothing. Sometimes it's just body weight.
Yeah.
But the movement is going to promote a healing response. It's giving you that stimulus, and without it, you're more likely, obviously you're gonna atrophy anyway from not using anything, but you're also not promoting blood flow and healing to the area.
Blood flow.
Yeah. What, like if you have muscle tear, you want blood flow to the muscle tear. You don't want that muscle sitting there atrophying, getting no stimulation and movement, and then scar tissue sets in, and then you're going to lose mobility. You want it moving. So, like, I've torn my left bicep several times. I go get 5-pound dumbbells out when I do that and do like 100 reps.
Oh, for blood flow. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get blood into it. I'm not training it.
Yeah.
But what I am doing is promoting blood flow and so I'm getting oxygen and other nutrients to the area. And just a little bit of stimulus to try to make it adapt, but not much. And the same holds true of any other system in the body, really. Short of like a broken bone, like you're not going to walk your way into fixing that.
Yeah.
Don't try.
So what if, Dan, did you raise your hand? No, okay. What about, we're at 6:30, maybe, if there's no more questions, let me just ask this. If someone doesn't have any exercise equipment at home, or they have nothing, but they got $50, or even $100, how far could you take a person in that situation, do you think?
Well, I mean, there's body weight stuff you can do that's beneficial. So if someone's starting from having done nothing to at least doing body weight stuff, they're going to see improvement.
Yeah.
And then when someone says $50, what I ask them is, so $50 a month?
Well, to buy equipment.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm asking them. Is $50 one time or $50 a month?
Yeah.
Because set that aside, go watch Facebook Marketplace, and someone's going to be selling a barbell for $50 or $100. And now you have just a barbell. And then later on, someone's selling plates, and then someone's selling a rack. Yeah. And it might take you a year to get equipment. Yeah. During that time, you were doing the best you could with what you had. But as long as you show up every time, you'll be 1,000 times better off than if you didn't show up.
Okay, and so the idea is I can't do anything until I have all the stuff. That's just false.
Don't do that.
You can do things now and only experience more results as you get more stuff.
Go pick up a rock in your yard.
I like that.
and walk around with it. I mean, I do that with sandbags all the time.
Yeah.
So
Justin's workout today, go pick up rock and walk around with it.
I have sandbags I just pick up and carry, and I have clients that do the same for strongman training and just conditioning.
Cool.
Like, it all makes you stronger.
Yeah. Any final questions for Justin before we wrap this up? Yes, wonderful mother-in-law in the back.
So, whole milk has more sugar than fat, correct? Than heavy whipping cream would have more fat and less sugar?
Yeah, whipping cream definitely has more fat than sugar, compared to milk.
So which of those options, I'm asking for a friend, if they were to make their own ice cream.
Aha, here it is.
What is
Yes.
it, the whipping cream or the whole milk?
I would say the whole
Because
milk.
of sugar and fat
I would say the whole milk.
is better.
But I'd also challenge you and say, have you considered using something like yogurt instead?
Oh yeah, Greek yogurt ice cream. Yeah.
You might give it a shot. You might give it a shot.
That's ice cream with protein in it at that point.
It's a very protein-heavy ice cream, and it tastes lovely, by the way.
Do they have any more yogurt stores around where you can buy the ice cream yogurt?
I don't know.
You'd have to go to a foofy store like Save Mart or Safeway, and I've seen Greek yogurt ice cream.
Safeway's foofy?
A little bit, sorry,
Whoa.
a little bit. I've seen Greek
Reading.
yogurt ice cream. Anderson. Yeah, so if Debbie starts a Greek yogurt ice cream company, that would take off.
All right.
You would do very well in the weightlifting community. I
A
promise.
bunch of meatheads are buying.
Oh yeah, you get guys twice my size like begging you.
Yeah, give me ice cream. All right, can I just round of applause for Justin? Thank you very much, man. Thank you.